Welcome to the My Creative Days podcast, where we will talk about all things DIY, home decor, decorating tips, and creating a beautiful home on a budget. I am hoping our time together will spark a creative idea, help you plan your next DIY, or inspire you to finally tackle that project you keep putting off. Grab your favorite cup of motivation and let's chat. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm going to talk about something that has come up a couple of times since talking about this new property that we bought that we are going to fix up. And in the past we have flipped them and sold them, but I think we are planning on keeping this one and renting it out. That's our plans right now, but things may change. So this has come up personally and it has come up online since making this fun announcement. So I thought I would talk about it here on the podcast. So basically the question is, how do you assess a property, like a property's potential, before you buy it? Let me start off by saying that we have been looking for our next flip or our next, investment property. I guess that's what I should call it, for over 3 years. It has been a long time. And in those 3 years, we have looked at so many houses. We have seen so many houses. And I think my number one, especially if you're new to this, my number one thing would be, do not settle. Do not just rush into something because you want something, because if it's not the right house or the right investment, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to make sense. Numbers wise, it's not worth it. I'm telling you that it is not worth it. Coming from us, we have been waiting 3 years for this to happen. So it depends on also where you are, not necessarily financially, but like what the investment's going to look like for you, right? So that's going to be different for everybody too. When we first started out, it looked different than what we are right now. So that's going to be, that's obviously a huge factor that goes into it as well. But there's so many options, and you can research those online for, how you can finance, something like this. There's a lot of options out there. So definitely do your research for that. Look at your finances before you start, even looking at houses. Like, just get a good grasp on where you are, what the investment's going to look like, financial wise for you. Can you pay cash? Do you need to get a loan? Do you need a private investor to go in with you? Like, there's just so many different options. So definitely, I think you need to get all your ducks in a row there before you even start looking at a house. Secondly, what you need to know is what your skill set is. That is hands down, because when you're going through these properties, you need to know, you're like, okay, it needs a new roof. Well, can you do that? Or do you need to hire somebody to do that? It needs a new furnace. Can you do that? Or do you need to hire somebody to do that? Right? So because that needs to go into your costs when you're looking at a potential property. So number 2, knowing your skill set is, before you even go through a house, you need to be pretty clear on what you can and cannot do. Number 3, start going through houses, putting it out there, or properties. Maybe you're looking at duplexes. We had a duplex too, whatever it is. Start looking at properties. You can just do that online if you want to just start there. Start getting a feel of what the prices are, what the houses are going for, those kinds of things. It's just good for you to be really, really educated on it before you even physically get into a house, right? And so then I guess I'm going to tell you that every property we have had has not been listed. It has not been listed with a realtor, and except for one, not really advertised, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind. It is not just the houses that you see on Zillow. And even our realtor, she said sometimes Zillow is not, it's not the fastest, right? So like, if you have a realtor, you tell them what you're looking for, and tell them, maybe you can be the first on the list. The only thing that, a lot of realtors out there, they invest in the good ones too, right? And they're the first ones to see it. So I would tell you to find a realtor that's really wanting to, work hard in finding you those good investments that, are at a good price point. So when we walk through a house, we know exactly what we have to do. So, or not what we have to do, I'm sorry, what we can and cannot do. So I'm just using this house as the example. So the first thing we do is we find the address, and we drive by it. So we got the address to this one and we drove by it. I will not set up a showing or anything until I have gone by the house. You get a good sense of the neighborhood, the street, the other houses on the block, and the house. And it's a waste of your time. It's a waste of, if it's a realtor you're reaching out to, if it's the owner you're reaching out to, it's just a big waste of time if it's something you're not even gonna. So don't go to it blindly and just show up and know, I hate this, I don't want it. Drive by it first. Just get a sense of what the property looks like. You don't even have to get out of the car and walk around it. Like, obviously you shouldn't, but you know what I mean? You can see at least the front of it or whatever, what it has. And then again, you get a good sense of the neighborhood and the property. When we went by this one, we knew this property, this area, we know it like the back of our hands. Like I said, it's not on the same street or anything. It's around the first house that we bought. So we know the neighborhood. It's great. We drove up and down the street. We looked around the neighborhood. All of those were great. When we got to the front of the house, it just started getting better. We noticed that it had a new roof on both the house and the garage. Now, we had a derecho storm come through here a few years ago. It devastated our city. And so a lot of houses got new roofs and stuff because of that, because we don't have trees anymore, pretty much. So, trees were falling on roofs and all of that. So a lot of houses right now have new roofs and stuff. So it did have a new roof on the house and a roof on the garage. The house got a complete tear down, which is great. So we found that afterwards as we were going through the house. The house had all brand new siding on both the house and the garage. The house had all new windows already done. That is something that is new for us because I think every other house we've done, we had to put in windows. So that was just like, oh my gosh, it's got all new, even in the basement, like the little, this is not like a basement where you have like a walkout basement or anything. So it's got the little short windows. Those have all been replaced. I was like, what? So that was amazing. And then there is in the front of the house, they poured a brand new kind of like patio, which is really nice at the front of the house. The big tree in the front had been trimmed, I'm sure, after derecho, those kinds of things. There's a fenced in backyard. So those were all things that we looked on the outside. And then when you're also on the outside of the house, look at the air conditioning unit. They're usually, here where we live, they're on the outside of the house. You can see does it need to be replaced or not? This one, it doesn't. It was just replaced a few years ago. Same with the furnace. So I knew the furnace and the air were new. So I knew those two things. Number one, we can't do those ourselves. So that's something we'd have to hire out. And that's something we can't do. So that's a bigger ticketed item. So right off the bat, and the roof, same thing. We would have hired that out. So right off the bat, those things were already taken care of. Windows, you can do replacement windows. But again, it's something we don't have to worry about, and siding. So we knew, that was nothing we had to worry about. So those are huge high ticket items that didn't have to be, that were already taken care of. So then as soon as we walked into the kitchen, it's like, okay, here's where the work's going to begin. The refrigerator is brand new. I always get scared, especially the properties we're going through, right? We are looking for the worst house on the block. If you've watched any flip show on HGTV or whatever, it really is where you need to be. Opening a fridge, I usually don't do it. So when she was showing us through the house, she's like, this is a new fridge and look at the inside. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it looks brand new. But the stove and the dishwasher, those need to be replaced. And then it's, cabinets and countertops in the kitchen all need to be replaced. So, right away we're like, okay, what we do is when we go through the house, and we actually went through this one twice, and so we make, kind of a more detailed list a second time, but we know that okay, those are two things we have to do. And those are kind of, those aren't going to be cheap, but we have to do those things in the kitchen. And that includes 2 appliances. So then everything else in the house, like all of the flooring was ripped up. And I was hoping maybe, but I knew probably not. You sometimes know the age of the house and all those things. I was hoping for some hardwood floor somewhere. There's absolutely none. So, you just have to think about all of that. So there are 3 bedrooms and there are 2 bathrooms. So, do you just do like an LVP in the living room, the hallway? The kitchen has like a tile floor. And I was telling Matt, I'm like, if we're going to rent it, I just, once we get in there, I'm going to look at it better. It needs a good cleaning, obviously, but if it's not cracked or anything, I think it's like real tile. It's a little more beige than I would choose, but if it's in good condition, I might leave it, So, anyway, so we know that has to happen. Paint is going to be our best friend. We have to paint anything and everything. And I am so upset. It's like a lot of the trim was painted, but yet it's kind of the paint's chipping off. So we might have to get all new trim everywhere, which it's not a huge deal, but that's just like, you have to wait. Here's another thing. Then you have to wait for all the flooring to be put down. So then you can put the trim on top of the flooring or the carpet or whatever. Like, so now you're getting into, and I'm not going to do that here, but now you're getting into your schedule and your timeline. Like, we have to get this done first before we can do this, before we can do that. And so it's just kind of walking through each room and knowing exactly, when I say exactly, like you're going to find things on sale and you're going to find things that you had to pay more for than you budgeted. So just knowing what you're going to have to do before you buy it, because you have to, when you're done going through the house, you have to sit down and do the numbers. So, going through this house, we know it's basically flooring and paint. All upstairs and in the basement. There's like a family room, so we know that down there it's definitely flooring if it's carpet or whatever. And then we also think we want to do some kind of paneling or something, don't think your 60s plastic paneling, but something down there maybe on the walls to warm it up. Again, we're going to see once we get in there, and that would be kind of last on our list, just depending on how much we spend upstairs. So the big places you need to look, it's the kitchen and the bathroom. So the bathroom needs a whole new vanity. It needs a new mirror. And this one has a inset mirror, but that's not but it's like the built-in mirrors from back in the day where it's like the medicine cabinets inside the mirror and it's like inside the wall. Does that make sense? So I definitely need new ones of those. I need a new light fixture, tub and shower surround. They're okay. The people before did a not great job on some caulking and stuff, but paint in there. And so that's pretty much the bathroom. So, and they are small. It's like a small bathroom. And same with downstairs. There's a bathroom downstairs. We need flooring and then probably a vanity. Basically, it comes down to numbers when you're assessing a property. Obviously, a huge one for us is the foundation. So I know not everybody has basements where you live, but for us, we do have some houses. We actually flipped a house we call them slabs here. I'm sure that's back in the day. That's my dad's talking, but I'm sure they're called something else now, but where there's no basement. And we actually did a property like that. But the foundation is a huge deal for us, right? So if there's any foundation issues, it's a definite no for us because we know our limits, right? And we know what we can and can't do and how much it's going to be worth in the end. And so a good thing to do as well is even if you are renting or Airbnb or, whatever you're doing, the numbers still have to make sense. So another thing that you can do, so let's say you've done your homework, you know what your skill set is, and now you've went through a house. So you've got your numbers, you know what it's going to cost to kind of do stuff. And even then go walk through a Lowe's or a Menards or a Home Depot. And so we actually did that. It's been 3 years since we've done one. And prices are a lot different now, right? And so we just wanted to kind of get a feel of, okay, let's just go look at some LVP and some paint these days. How much more is it? Those kinds of things. So we just walked around and just kind of looked at prices and stuff. So that's not a bad thing to do either. But then so you've got your list of what you're going to have to do to the house. Now you're going to look at the comps all around the area. You can use Zillow for this. That's a great free resource. So look around and see what houses in that neighborhood have sold for recently. Don't go looking at something that sold 15 years ago. That isn't even a comp anymore. You want the most recent comps. And then sometimes on Zillow, you can, depending on how recent it was listed or sold or whatever, you can see the inside pictures, right? You can see pictures of the outside, the listing photos, which is huge. So for this house, for me, when I was negotiating with her, she was trying to sell me on what these other houses sold. And she's like, oh, they sold for so much money. Well, when I looked up the houses she actually pointed me to, I'm like, this is what it sold for. So, do you see the inside photos, right? Like they are completely decked out, right? Like people, did a good job. The basements weren't great. Like they didn't do much in the basement, but the upstairs was completely done. So, that is when you're looking at the comps, you're doing your numbers, all of that stuff is your negotiating power, right? Like all of that knowledge, you need that for your negotiations. So you don't want to come to the table and be like, oh, well, you want this much and I really just only want to pay this. Well, why? Like you need to have backup, you need to have an arsenal of what to state your case, to state your price, right? Or your negotiation or whatever. So basically, just like anything that you're investing in, how to, people, this is the question I was getting, like, how do you know if it's like the potential or if it's a good property to buy? It's all of these things that you kind of have to take into account. And you have to, if you get to that negotiation or you get to that point where you're like, I want to make an offer, you need all of that stuff behind you and that knowledge to make sure that this property does have good potential for you to be investing in. You just have to have the knowledge. You just have to, and there's a little bit of that do it scared kind of, right? So there is that. It is scary. Like nothing is guaranteed when you're doing this, right? And you're gonna run into hiccups. Like any DIY project you've ever seen me do on my creative days, on my website, on YouTube, from a small furniture flip to, we're adding an accent wall somewhere in the house, to the other flip houses we've done that I've shared on all of my accounts. There is always going to come where plan A is not going to work. So you need plan B, C, D, and E, right? So there is that, this investment is not like, guaranteed. It's not going to be roses and rainbows. And you see people sharing all the time, invest in real estate, invest in Airbnb, get Airbnbs, get rentals, and I think it's a great investment if it works for you, but it is not for everybody. I don't think it's a one size fits all, because it's just, if you are looking to do this and how to assess if the property's potential before buying, it's all the things I went through this podcast in the beginning. Those are the things that you have to know and you have to be confident in when you are going into a property and thinking about buying it. Those are the things you need to do for sure. So, and again, it just comes down to numbers. It's got to make sense, right? It's got to make sense on both ends. Even if you are renting this or like Airbnb-ing it. So meaning you're not buying it and then in 3 to 4 months you're selling it, right? So even if you're just renting it, you still don't want to be in that house or that property, whatever it is, more than it's worth in the end, right? So it just has to make sense. You've got to know your numbers. You've got to stay within those numbers. And yeah, it is super fun. It is, stressful at times. It's not easy. It's not easy. Nothing worth having or nothing worth doing is. But it's doable, right? So, and those are the things that I would tell you for sure. If you're going into this or just thinking about it, those are some tips and tricks that I would definitely tell anybody, like the people that personally asked me to you here on the podcast. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions about this or any other questions or topics you would like me to discuss here on the podcast, please, please, please email me, Lindsay@mycreativedays.com. Reach out to me just on Instagram. Send me a quick DM. It's @mycreativedays on Instagram. And your questions, your topics, or what you need help with are so helpful to me, because then I know exactly what I need to record here on the podcast. So if you found this helpful, share it with somebody that might benefit from it. I love it when you share the podcast. It means the world to us. So yeah, until next time, I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you very soon. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I'm grateful that you tune in every week and that you share the show with your family and friends. I love having creative chit chats with you, and my hope is that this podcast will inspire you to try a new project, start a DIY that you've been putting off, and decorate your home exactly how you want it. There are a few ways you can help us with the podcast. Follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you could take a few minutes to leave the podcast a review, that would help us so much. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to our chat next week. Bye-bye.